Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you again, Dr. Paul.
Very good. Chris, before we get started with the program, I have a message from the Birch Gold Group, and I want to deliver that message right now. They're partners with us in the gold business, and then we'll be following up with our regular program. Well, it's finally happened. The Fed is realizing the dire straits our economy is in thanks to our loose monetary policy. Apparently, you can't just spend trillions every year with no repercussions. Now, to play catch-up, the Fed has been raising rates and plans to do so 7 times more this year. You're already starting to see those ripple effects in the housing market as the people's buying power diminishes. Have you considered what could happen in the stock market if our economy stalls out? Don't wait till that happens. Take some of your profits from the stock market now and solidify them with gold from Birch Gold. Throughout history, gold has maintained its value better than any other investment in the world. Text RON to 989898 for a free, zero obligation info kit on holding gold in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Join the thousands of happy Birch Gold customers with countless 5-star reviews and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. I trust the professionals at Birch Gold. Chris, what do you have on for our program today?
Well, we're talking baby formula shortages, Dr. Paul, and it's really the same story, just a different industry that we deal with our corporatist state in this country, which is a marriage of the government and big corporations. And lo and behold, as we're doing our research for this baby formula crisis and the shortages, we find out, I read at least, that there are 3 companies that control 90% of the baby formula market. Now, is this a free market? Because in that case, if there's free competition, anyone can enter, we wouldn't have a problem with it. But of course it's not. We have protectionist laws that protect these 3 companies from foreign competition, and there are huge subsidies that get funneled to them through the WIC program. So these companies are cemented in place and protected by government regulations and laws. And we see this over and over, whether it was with the vaccines getting tens of billions of dollars, and even more recently, the $40 billion that went to Ukraine, which is actually going to military contractors like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon. So this is how it works in this country. It's a corporatist system, and Americans really need to change their minds because they are drilled right from the beginning that you must have government regulations. You can't just have corporations ripping us off just as they would like, but that's exactly what we have. We have corporations that use the government to rip us off constantly, and the numbers are getting staggering by the tens of billions that are constantly being taken from us. We need free markets and government out of the economy. They should punish force and fraud, but getting into the nitty-gritty of every single industry is, it's producing these bad results. But Americans believe that we need this, and that that they're opposites, that the government regulations, the corporations, they hate it. But it's the exact opposite. Ron Paul ran twice for president. So these big corporations had 2 chances to finally throw the government yoke off of their backs. They could have had free markets and not had the government all over them. And you know what? You know how many corporations chose that? 0, because they love government regulations. That's how they rip us off. But Americans really need to change their mind. We need to move to free markets.
Very good, Chris. And, we wanted to talk about this today. It's not the top issue in the news, and I was a little surprised they're not talking about it as much as they did maybe a week ago, and they have other subjects. But we consider this very important also because it demonstrates so clearly, generally speaking, and Chris mentioned this. It's a little different, but it's all the same. It's, government mismanagement. They mess things up. The government solutions, they come in. And they've already, as far as they're concerned, maybe they quit reporting and quit talking about it because maybe they figure they've already solved the problem. What they've done is Congress has acted on it. They went and said, this is very necessary to take care of it. They didn't say, well, too many corporations were making money and we're going to attack corporatism. No, they immediately, because we have so much money in the bank, we don't know what to do with it all. Of course, it's all printed, but nevertheless, at $28 million, they'll start with that, and it'll go up as necessary. They appropriated $28 million. There were only nine people voted against it in the House. So it is strongly supported. The corporatism is supported. And also, we have, Chris mentioned several examples of how the big corporations get involved. They get protectionism. Most everything has to be produced in the United States. Over 80% of the milk products, the formula, are produced here. They handicap the imports. So there's protectionism and price controls, and the FDA is very much involved. I recall when WIC was started. Matter of fact, that was right at the time I was getting interested in politics in the early 70s. But before the Bretton Woods closed down in 1972, they started the WIC program. Nobody could be opposed to it, and nobody can oppose it now because it wants to help poor people do better and have proper nutrition, and they are the protectors. Now it's a crisis proportion. That means we need more money and more regulation. I've often wondered about the philosophy of any type of an emergency, especially natural emergencies apply, because we have them here in Texas. We have hurricanes and there are floods and different things. So under these conditions, the government is going to protect against gougers. People will come in. People are starving and they need things that are out of products, and some people are willing, prices are going up. I will serve my interest and their interest. I'm going to rent a truck, I'm going to fill it up, and I'm going to drive in there, and then they sell it, their goods that are very, very necessary, because by that time the emergency has caused shortages. They charge more. Of course, that's good. But no, they get blackballed, and they're said to be the criminals because they're charging more money. But what good could making them pay more money right now? Increase the supply. That's the reason they went in. They didn't go in there because the prices were frozen, but now they want to freeze them. The worse the emergency gets, the more they want to control. And it's through prices and regulation. This is such a good example of that. But it led up to it. 1972, the WIC program started, but they got control of the market, and they had those three companies that make the milk products. They the ones got the contracts, and of course, it's led to this problem. They had this incident in February where 4 people got a disease and 2 died at one of the plants that was making the formula. Had nothing to do with anything else, and it was a bad incident. But four people got sick, and there was a reaction. There should be. They needed to check their plant. But it contributed tremendously because they closed down a lot of plants. I'm not even sure that plant has opened up again. No matter what inspection they did, no, it's probably not clean enough. We better, and we've messed this up, so we better send them some more money. So the one problem leads to another, and they've been doing the same thing, and that is what they don't understand. And I just want to say that Mises had this thing correct. He says when they start regulating, and sometimes it doesn't happen immediately, but when they start regulating an industry or putting a regulation on a certain item or transaction, you create 2 new problems. And guess what? I don't even know how many thousands of pages that we have in the Federal Register. But I know it's growing. People promise we're going to shrink it, but it keeps growing just because they didn't listen to Mises. He says when you create those regulations, you make things worse and it costs a lot more money, and that is what's happening here. And then you throw in the complications of of what we're suffering from still from the lockdown and the supply lines from COVID. Almost all that was unnecessary, all the lockdown stuff. But that is in there too, so it's not easy. And then you have on top of that the basic inflation of printing too much money, and prices go up for that reason too. So the knowledge is there, the correction is well known, it's not complex, but since government and the special interests, the corporations, the bureaucrats are all doing the wrong thing, what they're working on is making a long-term depression out of this, exactly what they did when they introduced the New Deal in the 30s. The depression then could have been over in a year, but no, they strung it out for 15 years. And that's what we're doing now. Every time you hear this nonsense, what they're doing is just stretching out this crisis. And Chris, as far as I'm concerned, I think that the free market people and the Austrian economists have a much better grips on what exactly is wrong and what we should be doing.
Right, Dr. Paul, and they refuse to do the right thing. They just want to keep digging a further hole. With the baby formula, we have a problem. It's concentrated in 3 companies and huge government intervention, protectionism, and subsidies. So what do I read on Twitter this week? Democratic senators want Biden to appoint a baby formula coordinator. I mean, it's almost as if it's like the Soviet Union. You know, they're so full of themselves, they're enamored with czars and directors and coordinators. The problem is too much concentration, and they want to concentrate it in one person. I mean, but this is a very common illusion. It's an illusion that one person can have a complete picture of everything. And it's a total illusion. Human beings can never have a complete picture. We can never be all-knowing. We are the creation, not the creator. So when one person is presumed to have this complete picture, and you could think of Fauci as a recent example, not only do they not have a complete picture, they end up looking completely foolish in the end. One person cannot make decisions for 300 million unique and different individuals. Everyone is different, you know, and we live in different circumstances. To presume that you have this czar, this baby formula czar, that's going to fix everything is just completely naive. But people keep repeating the same mistakes over and over. But the reality is we have to make individual decisions locally, and only we can see our local situations in order to know what the right and next thing to do should be.
You know, the inflation is being talked about a whole lot right now, and they should, but they're assuming the CPI tells you about the inflation. That's the result of the inflation of the monetary system, and that's where it has been. Trillions and trillions of dollars in these last couple of years have been created, devalues the currency, and this is what happened. It's just translated into rising prices. But the one part of that scenario isn't mentioned very often, but I think is very important, because what it does, and they do it on purpose, is they believe that the economy will survive with lower than market interest rates. So that's why they went down to zero, but did seem to solve the problem. It just meant that we ended up with shortages, a recession, and higher inflation. So it goes on and on. But what they don't talk about very often is not only do prices go up, and then they invite the government on the regulations and price controls, there's such a thing called malinvestment. The people are getting the wrong signal. They're told interest rates are very, very low, and that's a signal to invest and build, and be more productive. And where it means that there's they claim that's oversaving, but there is no saving. So anyway, the malinvestment exists there. But I want to mention one other thing that helps cause the malinvestment, pushing money in the wrong way. We've already talked enough about, those 3 companies that have the protection of the government and the contracts and the pricing mechanism and all of those things are already there. But the people that are involved in this are all also champions of ESG, and that's the group that has turned it into a religious fervor to and the Federal Reserve and others are behind this because you're the enemy of liberty if you even suggest that you shouldn't you shouldn't allow this ESG to participate in controlling. The E stands for environmental. Company has to have, voluntarily, of course. Mm-hmm. They can get the green light from the government for all the benefits they get if you do follow all the environmental things. And then the other things is the social things. So cultural, social. We saw that why are the corporations doing so much to harm themselves on lockdown? Well, that's part of this whole thing that they're politically correct. They're culturally minded, and so the ESG and the governor and the G is for governance. They believe in governance, and yet they still do this so often in the name of peace and prosperity and freedom and constitutionalism and fighting wars you don't need and all. But why am I mentioning this? That is further distortion of the marketplace and investments in companies that probably otherwise wouldn't have been invested, and they're not investing. Matter of fact, a lot of those companies that follow all those rules aren't doing as well as the ones that aren't involved in that cultural Marxist movement. So this just makes the problem worse because as the weaker companies have to be liquidated because they're more likely at bankruptcy, and yes, there's a limit. There's already a limit to sending out more money of value. We're just sending out paper now. So that malinvestment that occurs with the belief in ESG is also sitting out there annoying a lot of the market people, the natural tendency to liquidate and clean up the mess and develop better standards. And as we've already talked about, what would need to be done if you want more baby formula, you have to apply some of those principles. It's just criminal what they're doing, and we said similar words when we talked about the mandates of forcing young people and children to take these vaccines, these booster vaccines, and they have no proof that there is economic or sound reasons for doing that. Chris.
Very good, Dr. Paul. Yeah, I'm going to close up that ESG. The market wins in the end. They could come up with any schemes that they want and call it voluntary. The market will not be defeated, and that's just the way it works. But the big picture that I wanted to close with is most of us, unfortunately, have become dependent on this system that we live in with corporations tied to the state. And much of it is unnecessary. We don't really need to be dependent on them at all. And as inflation continues to eat away at our earnings, we're each going to have to decide who do we need and who do we no longer need. And we probably will be surprised that we don't need much of the stuff that we buy and many of the corporations that end up getting our money. So it's important to consistently, myself included, think about this. And there's no single instruction because we're all different. We live in different environments and different circumstances. What makes sense for one will not make sense for another. What makes sense for a person that lives on a farm will be different than somebody who lives in the suburbs or lives in a city. But it should be clear that after these vaccine passports, which totally disappeared, but we could see what they were trying to do, they want us dependent on them, and then they're going to use that dependence as leverage to force us to do things that we don't want to do, like get an injection. Oh, you don't want to get an injection? Well, maybe you're not allowed to shop here anymore. How would you like that? I mean, that's the direction we were going in just a few months ago, and it all fortunately disappeared for the time being, at least. So we have to peel ourselves away from this garbage, because that's what it is. It's garbage. It's this is not the way humans are meant to live, as as rats in some kind of experiment. So we have to continually think smaller, think locally, and find ways and backup plans. If this is no longer available, what do I do? If this isn't available, do I need it? So we need to do that and gain independence from this weird system that is trying to be imposed on us And after all, in the end, is there anything better? Is there anything more American than gaining some personal independence?
Very, very good, Chris. You know, the issue of free speech is present with us with the social media and with Biden appointing somebody that knows how to monitor. That didn't work out so well. But the principle still exists, and that's why there was so much cooperation and rolling over by corporations, because governments have so much control, and they can control the social media companies. So I see the social media as an arm of government, which makes it a little more difficult saying, well, what we have to have is free speech and get the government out of the way. But how are we going to solve it? The first reaction is regulate them, and don't let them, do things don't let them say things that aren't right. We have to regulate their speech, but that really isn't very easy, and it's not going, and it can backfire on you. But if they want to do something, they ought to see, well, what is the relationship of big government and the social media? And there's a lot of monetary connections there. So they shouldn't get anything from the government. And they help develop them, and they still do a lot of work with them. What should this free market do better than the conditions that we've had now, when there's been this corporatism between social media and big government? One thing they could do is maybe the free market could sort it out, and maybe in order to be in a certain business organization, you'd have to be audited. But just think of the reports now of companies that are fudging and lying about their real wealth and pretending, oh, we have 14 billion customers, and nothing ever seems to happen to them. And I think the market should take care of that. But I think it's a real shame of what's happening, because they have had such an influence, this corporatist alliance between big business and big corporations and the government. And this is so often, they're the problem. And I think this whole subject we just talked about is something that's been smoldering there. It was predictable. I'm sure we could find somebody back in 1972 that said, well, this is another bureaucracy, it's not going to end well. But even now, they're not talking about the principle of, WIC and the principle of business and government working together. The goal was very honorable. We want to make sure poor people get formula. And guess what today? The poor people can't get formula. So that was the conclusion. But that doesn't wake people up. What we want to continue to do is try to wake people up that the marketplace freedom offers an alternative to all this mischief of government intervention and spending and wars that are being fought, not understanding what a free enterprise system is actually about. I think right now, the greatest thing that people are seeking right at the present time is looking for the truth. And do they have the truth now about COVID? It's coming out slowly. It's just sneaking out. But that's what people want. And I think they don't want to they don't want to make the truth available, because then people might want to make up their own mind. And that destroys the whole scenario, not only cultural Marxism, but all Marxism and all interventionism, all wild-eyed progressive economic theories, all that stuff. Fiat money, it just ruins if they had all the facts. And of course, that's what we should do, is we have to keep looking for it, and you will find there'll be people out there that will be on our side and producing to their best ability the truth of the matter. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.